Bernard Silverman. John, I'd like to ask you which it is. Is it that science's narratives and religious narratives are not superposable? Or is it that religious belief gives well, you would say this, wouldn't you, a broader and deeper appreciation of everything? And the reason is, I think that there's a danger, in my view, of suggesting that religious belief is something which is, as I say, a different narrative from science, whereas if we take, or anyone that takes religious belief seriously, or anyone who opposes religious belief seriously, will see it as something which is all-encompassing and includes all of science and all of everything else as well. That's not a plea for pantheism, and it certainly isn't one for natural theology, but I am a little concerned about pushing a notion that religious belief is only about what you call meaning rather than what you call process, because I'm not sure I really understand the difference.
Well, I think I'm fairly unrepentant about that. When I say they're not superposable, of course, in one sense they are. They are different perspectives on the happenings of the one world of created reality. But it does seem to me that they are looking at really quite different aspects of that. It seems to me that process, that's how things happen, that the interactions between particles, whatever, is different from the question. I mean, particle physics in my generation sought to give the next answer to the question, what is matter made of? And came up, of course, with quarks and gluons and the Standard Model. Now, the argument for that was simply, these explain various phenomena, deep and elastic scattering, etc., which become intelligible in that sort of way. That's how these things come about. There was no argument to say it was really very desirable or ought to be quarks and gluons, and so on. It was an entirely different kind of argument. So it does seem to me that there are some distinctions that are worth maintaining in that area.
Martin Barbara, if I could follow that directly. I think this question's been asked a few times, John, but I'm not sure I've got the answer. So I go along with the distinction you make of science trying to understand the process and the physical structure and interaction of the things that we can touch and see, and also your view that there are things that science doesn't address that you've called meaning in a broader way. The first of those, it seems to me that science is a methodology, and the only methodology that I can imagine which allows us to understand or to try to understand and to learn about the world we're living in. And any new type of method or insight or way of going at that would still be science if it was going to work, because it's a thought system that goes through a process of logical deduction. On the other hand, if one approaches what you've called meaning, I can see that you get it from religion, but I'm not sure whether you're saying that that's the only way to get it. And for me, religion seems a sort of option, one of several ways in which people could get a broader sense of what everything means and what is important and what isn't. And when, as a really small-minded person as I am, I look around me for the occasional empirical observation, all I can see is people around me, some of whom are religious and extremely good, and some of whom are irreligious and extremely awful, but the other two parts of that square are equally well filled in.
Well, let me say straight away that I'm not claiming a monopoly on ethical insight or ethical behavior for religious people. That's obviously, as you say, empirically not the case. And that's why I said earlier that I think on these perplexing issues of what we should do and what we shouldn't do, people of ethical goodwill and discernment should work together, whatever their metaphysical connection is. The only advantage I think that the religious person has is I think we know where our ethical intuitions come from. I think they are intimations of the good and perfect will of the God who is the creator of the world. But that doesn't help to solve problems. Now, you and I, Martin, have served on a number of committees about human genetics and ethical problems arising from them. And my experience of those committees, I imagine you might agree, is that they are a two-phase committee. In the first phase, whatever the problem is, the experts like you are telling the rest of us what can be done, what the processes will bring about. could do this, could do that, what are the possible side effects and defects of that. And of course, in that situation, the rest of us on the committee, the non-experts, have to sit and listen and be grateful for what we're told. But then the committee, it seems to me, goes into a different phase, as we physicists would say, and is then asking the question, should these things be done? And that seems to me quite a different, that's a question of value, and that seems to me quite a different question. And you scientists, and we non-scientists as far as genetics is concerned, have identical roles in relation to that. So I think there is a distinction there that this is valid and worth recognizing. But I'm not claiming a monopoly for religious insight, of course.
I mean, the key of science, about science, is that it's testable. And it's a very important part of our world and our life. But there are many aspects that are important to me as a human being which are not testable and which are not covered by science. I mean, questions of personal relationships, beauty, love, and so on. So I feel that there are different worlds or different narratives which are not totally separate. They intersect, or they interact. I think there are fuzzy boundaries between them where they interact and they affect each other. So for me, there's a physical world or a physical narrative of space, time and matter. There's a mathematical world of theorems, which is very different. And there's a world of consciousness. And in a sense, to me, there's a world of cosmic consciousness where you can ask these ultimate questions about the nature of reality and purpose and so on. And all of these different worlds or these different narratives interact with one another, and they're all important to me as a human being. And it's together that they make sense of the world to me.
Thank you, Eric. I meant to say something like that, but I forgot to say it. Certainly science isn't the only methodology. If I want to understand personal experience and personal relationships, I won't do it by setting little traps and tests to see whether my friends are trustworthy. The methodology for exploring something about the depths of human nature lies much more with great literature than in the laboratory. Again, I say what I said before. The world is very rich and complex, and we need a whole portfolio of methodologies to explore it.